Having wrapped up the microfiction workshop this week, I wanted to share my experience with you. Overall, very satisfied. It was an incredibly positive environment. The main surprise for me was how engaging all the other workshop authors were, especially in how they provided feedback on each other's work. While everyone was asked to provide feedback every day, not everyone pitched in with the same zeal or quality. Some writers offered unilateral praise for everything, which struck me as sort of fake, or at the very least, lacking critical thought. Some others kept their comments surface level, mentioning just a phrase or a line or word choice, and that felt like they were just phoning it in, kind of shortchanging the whole process. Still others were amazingly insightful in their analysis. It was a wide range, to be sure, but I knew I would not be satisfied with myself unless I found a way to provide valuable feedback. Finding the right tone for my feedback was challenging at first. I felt strange, holding other people's baby bird stories to a high standard of excellence, considering how fresh and unfinished they were. These were all first drafts, many of them rattled off same day, I imagine. So how high should the bar be, really? But still, I wanted to keep it real, to somehow walk that line of encouraging a stranger to go for better writing, just without it sounding arrogant or pushy. Pretty quickly, though, I chose a style and tone of critique where I was just shining a flashlight on opportunities for the next draft. So less focus on what is not there now, which is reductive and negative, and more emphasis on what could be there next go-round, which I consider more positive and energizing. Here was my format. I always provided a positive comment up front to acknowledge what was working well in the piece. Then I would pivot to a constructive feedback, usually what I thought was missing or what I wanted more of. Finally, I would offer a little keep at it type of closer. When I didn't like a story, I simply wouldn't comment on it. I figured if I couldn't identify one redeeming quality about a work in progress, then my opinion was maybe not super valuable for that writer. This was my way of hedging away from arrogance and ensuring my interactions with fellow authors was always constructive. It seems to have worked because one writer, whose comments on my work were consistently compelling, agreed to connect in the real world. It's really cool to have made a new writer buddy to trade feedback with down the road. So great! Workshop is over. Writers have taken or left the feedback to gather digital dust in the comments. Now what? Well, funny thing is, now that I have mental distance, I can approach my own rough drafts with the same constructive grace that I just spent 3 weeks cultivating. I can come back to my workshop stories like a visitor, clear-eyed, and provide myself with that same constructive feedback in that same basic format. Something positive, something constructive, and an attaboy to keep moving. I'm even pulling in those dualities that Tim and I discussed just last week, like prose versus story or idea versus execution. Everything is colliding in perfect unison. Like I just spent the past 3 weeks sharpening my skills critiquing other people's work. What if I did all that work to improve my own internal editor just in time to turn the lens back on my own work and make it better? For example, in the last refill episode, I mentioned my day 2 story about time racing alongside a narrator throughout their whole life. It was a neat idea, but fell way short on the execution. So I read it back and imagined it was somebody else's story. What would I have said to them? I added a small paragraph of notes right below it, right there in the doc, and gave myself the same kind of, here's something to think about feedback. And I was excited to see what came out. I will go back and redraft this one, especially now that I have such compelling advice on a new direction to try. So friends, this workshop not only helped me write more, but also gave me a way to look at my work without judgment. Rather than focusing on existing flaws, how bad the piece is now, I'm prioritizing ways to make the work better in the future. And look, I know this is not new, but it sure feels satisfying to know that the process works and is sustainable long term. As you consider trying this in your writing process, remember that you don't have to join a workshop to do it. Use online prompt generators to build out a week of story prompts. Assign yourself a word count constraint and let your imagination flow. Then put your first drafts away for a few weeks. When you come back to them, write yourself some feedback using my strategy of one positive sentence, one constructive sentence, and one supportive sentence. Be your own best teacher. See you next week. Start writing.